I have to start this episode off with a personal update. I have fully recovered from my viral fever. Thank you. I also had to take a week off from work to rest and recover. We are a small team, so I had to ask a lot of help to a lot of my colleagues, which is how I know I really have no clue how to ask for help. Apparently, I'm not alone. 4 in 10 young professionals reported having struggled with asking for help in a 2024 Indeed survey. Yes, indeed. In fact, a few weeks back, we spoke about imposter syndrome, if you remember. And one of our listeners, Vidya Nair, a UI UX designer, wrote to me about how having imposter syndrome also makes it difficult to ask for help.
I have always struggled asking for help because I take everything so seriously and so personally that it's difficult for me to get out of that shell and be like, hey, I need this kind of help and can you please guide me or can you please tell me what to do? Because I've always been that person who wants to figure things out by myself and, take that kind of ownership when it comes to dealing things by myself.
Well, that's Vidya, and whether or not you have imposter syndrome, there is something so difficult about asking for help, isn't it? I, for one, preface all my requests with apologies. I am so sorry to be such a bother. I feel terrible for asking you this. I hope I'm not burdening you with this request. And that never works. In fact, one of my colleagues even pointed out that when I do that, it kind of scares the other party into thinking I'm about to ask this huge, laborious, time consuming favor, and it typically never is. So, no more winging how to ask for help. I need to prepare for this. For something so important, to be good at our jobs, we are never formally taught about how to do this right. And a lot of the information that we have and the knowledge that we have comes from our friends, peers, and colleagues, and it might not be evidence based. So, today on the show, I asked some of my thorny questions about asking for help and with theirs to an expert, Wayne Baker. He's the author of the book All You Have to Do Is Ask. He also lectures at University of Michigan and Ross School of Business. And I also spoke to serial entrepreneur Srikanth Iyer, the founder and CEO of HomeLane, someone who strongly believes in the culture of reciprocity. Together, we're going to bust 3 big myths around asking for help, which is standing in your way. With that, I am Akshaya Chandrasekaran. This is The First 2 Years, a show where we ask and answer the toughest questions around work, especially in your early career. Before we get in, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy the show, could you please take a moment to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts? And if you're listening to the show on Spotify, which a lot of you are, you can comment below and tell me what you think about the episode. Or you can also write to me directly. All details about reaching out are in the show notes. I love hearing from all of you. So please, thank you. Let's dive right in. There we go. I'm doing it again. There are 3 big myths, like I said, that we need to bust if we want to get better at asking for help. The first one is that nobody wants to help you.
So there was an interesting study that was done in New York City. New York City is not known for its friendliness to outsiders or to strangers. So they thought this would be a perfect place to do this study. And it was done by researchers at Columbia University in New York City. So they recruited students to participate in this experiment. And the experiment took place in the field, that is out in the city. They sent people out and they had to go up to a stranger and say, "Can I borrow your cell phone to make a call?"
The challenge was simple, says Wayne Baker. Go out into the streets of New York and ask this question to strangers. Can I borrow your phone to make a call? But, you can't explain why. You can't give a sob story. You can't tell them who you want to call. All you have to do is ask. People might judge you, ignore you, look at you weirdly. Anything could happen.
When they found out what the experiment was about, that they had to go ask a stranger for help, a lot of people dropped out. They said, I don't care that you're paying me for this study. I'm not going to do that. But a number of students said, okay, I'll give it a try.
Wayne will answer this question in exactly 10 seconds. But what do you think was the outcome? How many strangers in New York City do you suppose the Columbia students had to ask before they finally got a cell phone?
Well, what they found was that either the first person let you use their phone or the second person on average. And so almost everyone was able to get to borrow a stranger's cell phone and make a call.
Initially, when I heard this, I was like, huh? But as I thought about it, it kinda made sense. Think about all those street-style interviews we've all seen on Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. The number of people who are okay to participate in an impromptu photo shoot when approached by a random photographer, or give spontaneous interviews about their career, music taste, and so on. As a journalist, we also do a lot of vox pop style interviews ourselves. And strangers are more open and willing than we think. And apparently, this isn't a new phenomenon. It has always been the case.
I think the propensity to help is part of human nature, that we've evolved that way. We've evolved that way as a species.
As we know from social psychology, even when we were hunters and gatherers, helpfulness was a part of human nature.
You know, that what made social life possible, living in groups possible, is that people were willing to give and get help from one another for mutual aid, assistance, and defense. And so I think we evolved as a species to be helpful.
Humans had to help others as a mechanism for survival. The more they helped others, the more they were helped in return, and higher the chances of survival. It is called reciprocal altruism, or to put it more simply, quid pro quo. It's what made the human species pro-social right from the beginning of time. So then how did things go off the rails and so away from what was once the norm?
Helpfulness might be part of our human nature, but asking is a behavior. And you get better at it the more you do it. It's just like exercise. Your muscles get stronger the more you exercise your muscles. You can think about asking as a muscle as well, that you get better at it by doing it.
People are willing to help. That's how societies have evolved. But knowing how to ask for help, that's a learned behavior, an acquired skill that needs to be nurtured.
So there's some common denominator that I use. I respond to every request, which means that it's not like I will ignore it. Meaning, if somebody sends me a WhatsApp message or an email or a text, whatever, I make sure, even if I'm saying a no, I respond first of all. My response is not going to be nothing, basically. That's a no-no for me. Right? Whoever it may be, whether it's my colleague, ex-colleague, friend, whoever, it does not matter. Somebody I know, casual acquaintance, friend's friend. For me, responding is a common denominator. I owe it to everybody who writes to me in whatever form.
That's Srikanth Iyer. He's the co-founder and CEO of HomeLane, which is one of the market leaders in the online home interior space today. And I can attest to what he's saying. I've spoken to him once before this, but when I sent him this message pitching this episode, he responded. Srikanth believes in reciprocity strongly, like I said, and HomeLane is raking in $100 million in revenue, 2,200 people work at the company, and it is spread across 22 cities in India. But he responds to every single person who writes to him. Why? I asked him. Because Srikanth benefited from the right kind of help during very pivotal moments in his career. And it transformed him. We'll hear more from him later, but now back to Wayne.
We overestimate people's unwillingness to help, even though we're very willing to help ourselves. You know, and I think it's one of those things that it's a misconception. And if you correct yourself by saying, okay, I'm willing to help and I'm not going to judge other people, you have to remind yourself that other people are like you too, that most people are willing to help and not judge you either.
If you are one of those people who find it easy to offer help, but when it comes to asking for help, you're giving yourself all kinds of excuses. Everybody's busy, I don't want to be a bother. Why would someone want to help me, especially if they don't have a direct benefit in doing so? Then you might just be living in this conundrum where you help everybody without judgment, but there is a lot of self judgment when you have to ask. The truth is, other people are wanting and waiting to help you. That brings us to the second misconception. Asking for help somehow makes you incompetent or weak.
Hi, I'm Snigdha, and I host the Ken's daily business news podcast called Daybreak along with my colleague Rahil Philippos. And I'm interrupting Akshaya to talk about a recent episode of Daybreak where we completely broke away from the regular format and we had a lot of fun recording it. You'll actually hear it in our voices. In this special episode that dropped last Friday, we talk about a pretty extraordinary trend that has completely changed how we all look at skincare. And it all started about 5 years ago when a bunch of new skincare brands popped up both abroad and in India. And all of them had one thing in common. Their products were named after chemicals. Niacinamide, hyaluronic acid, peptides, AHAs, BHAs, ceramides. But the funny thing is that they've been a part of our favorite skincare products forever. We just didn't know about them. So what changed? How did these chemicals go from the tiny print on the back of labels to bold fonts in the front? Rahil and I spoke to Shamika Haldipurkar, the founder of a homegrown skincare brand called Dew, and also Vasudha Rai, the former beauty editor of Harper's Bazaar, to get to the bottom of this. There's a link to the episode in the show notes of this one. So do give it a listen and let us know what you think. And with that, back to Akshaya.
The fear of seeming incompetent or unable to do your job might be misplaced because some research says that as long as you ask a well-formulated, powerful request, say for advice, people will think you are more competent, not less. It may sound counterintuitive, but if you go to the right person to ask for advice about something, you're telling that person, I recognize you as an expert, and people feel good about that, and they're more likely to think that you're competent. That they're the person that you need to go to.
This is a big concern among young people who are in their first 2 years. You want to prove yourself to your colleagues and manager. Give the people around you the sense that you know what you're doing and you're completely capable of doing your job all by yourself. The worst fear, among all others, is someone turning around and asking, how did you not know that? Did they not teach you this in your education? I typically assume that the need to ask for help goes down as you progress in your career. When you have more experience, this goes down. And this is completely a phase. Until I spoke to Srikanth, and he recalled a very important experience in his career so far.
Way back in 2000, I had started this edtech, and for the first 7 years were kind of roller coaster ride, edu ride, and as we were exiting, selling to a company called Tudor Vista, there were some instances where I really needed advice. This was the first time I was ever doing a sale of a company. I never ever done it in my life. This was in 2007. So how do you really negotiate? I had never done something like that. I had only
mergers and acquisitions. M&A, if you want to be fancy about it, it's what happens when one person or company buys another company. In this case, EduRite and Tutor Vista. How two companies go from meet cutes to solidifying their legal union is a complicated process. It's usually a will they won't they saga between the buyer company and the selling company, and there is always palpable tension. And Srikanth was justifiably lost between merger agreements and all the legalities involved.
At that point in time, I could not even showcase my vulnerability simply because now I am the founder and CEO of that business. So and I am in charge of selling that business. I can't, tell the person who's making the offer saying, hey, you know what? Tell me how does this work, right? I mean, it's not really the best negotiation tactic that I can think of.
So obviously, Srikanth needed help. Quite desperately, to be honest. The clock was ticking, and Srikanth had made up his mind to sell all his shares and move out of the company. He was quite ready to turn over a new leaf. But then, something happened.
So it was actually a place where I had to reach out to people who I knew would be knowledgeable about this and who I knew well, and more importantly, who I trusted. But then this gentleman told me, hey, you know what? You're looking at it completely the wrong way. If you are taking a bet on this gentleman who's acquiring you, then you must take the bet genuinely and go all the way. So he literally forced me not to sell a single share when we got acquired. I didn't sell a single stock of mine.
This obviously isn't how things normally go. Most founders who sell their shares stand to make a lot of money and tend to move on pretty quickly. But Srikanth trusted the advice and he stayed on. Did it work out for him? I asked.
In 3 years from when we got acquired, we got sold again for 20 times that value. 20x in 3 years. Because I got the right advice at the right time by somebody who knew what was going on, or at least what was the right bet to take at that point in time. Obviously, I didn't, but I did reach out. It was very clear that I was completely a zero in this. I wanted help, and I got it. It obviously changed my life. There's no two ways about it.
Even after a decade, Srikanth and his advisors still have a great relationship. He still recalls the timely advice that changed his life. It made him understand that very few people think less of you for needing assistance. And there is no better way to make someone feel good about themselves than to ask for advice, use it, and have it be the best advice you've ever received. After hearing Srikanth's story, I was astonished by what a simple deed of asking for help can do. It made me wonder about all the exciting things and possibilities that exist on the other side of getting over the discomfort of asking for help. But how does one do that? Wayne says you need to have a growth mindset, which is the third big misconception. It's not fear, inhibition, judgment that's holding you back from asking. It's the mindset.
The ability to ask for what you need is related to mindsets, such as those with a growth mindset.
For the uninitiated, there are two kinds of mindsets: fixed mindset and growth mindset. It's a framework popularized by Deborah and Sophie Regal in the book Go to Help, a book that my colleague Hari recommended I read, and read I did in my 1 week of rest. Founders and entrepreneurs are often believed to have a growth mindset, which is what makes them so uninhibited to go after what they want. And most people who struggle to ask for help sort of have a fixed mindset. But what is the distinction? Well, when you have a fixed mindset, you tend to believe your skills and strengths are innate. You also believe that your talent alone will lead you to success, no extra effort required. You think of challenges as something you work around, and you measure yourself by failures. You're either good at something or you're not. In contrast, there is growth mindset, something Srikanth had. When you have a growth mindset, you believe that your skills, abilities, and talents can and will grow with time, experience, and yes, effort. You think of challenges as something to embrace. You're motivated to ask for help and be curious when you don't know something. When you have a fixed mindset, you think I can either do it or I can't. When you have a growth mindset, you think I can either do it or I can't do it yet.
And an intrinsic part of a growth mindset is that you don't know everything, that you're learning no matter what, and that you do need to reach out and make requests of other people. And that's part of what a growth mindset means. And I think it is something that can be cultivated.
Gosh, as I'm listening to you, I'm starting to feel like I don't have enough of a growth mindset. I'm trying, but I'm not there yet. And it's probably the real reason why it's difficult to ask for help.
Oh, it's not just you, it's many, many people. So I talked to a lot of people, and I really wanted to get a real cross section, to talk to people from different walks of life, different occupations, different professions, different ages, different origins, whatever it might be. And what I found is that there's an almost universal reluctance to ask for what you need.
What if your request for help has been denied before and you're still reeling from what happened? I'm sorry, rejection stings, but there are apparently ways to recover from this.
Yeah, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. One is to be an anthropologist, to be an observer, right? To say, okay, I'm going into this completely different culture, this different village, and I need to learn the rules of this village, whatever it might be. And so to be a good observer and to learn, see who's helpful, who's not helpful, to see what happens when other people ask for help, to also look for opportunities to give help to other people, because you could still do that. And then another thing would be to start with a very safe and small request, so that if it's denied or even ridiculed, it doesn't really matter, right? Start with something small and safe, kind of as a test to see how well it might be received.
After listening to this episode, if you're motivated to make a small and a safe request with someone you trust, please do and tell me how it went for you. Also, if any of what you heard from Wayne and Srikanth made you rethink any of your existing beliefs, I would love to know that as well. I'd also love to know what you want more from the podcast, your aspirations, anxieties, cares, concern. Tell me, sign me up for the task, and I'll help you find answers. Thank you for listening. Until next week, this is the first 2 years from the Ken. This episode was written, hosted, and produced by me, Akshaya Chandrasekaran, and sound engineering by Rajiv Sian. Thank you.